Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you guys. Today in this one, we have more Swordsoul Tenyi games, and I am very pleased, excited, what have you, to show, I'm sure you can already see, yes, I did manage to hit Diamond 1. It is currently the 9th that I am recording this video, just hit it a little while ago, so yeah, it's kind of funny, like, I almost knew this would happen, though, in a way. As soon as I, like, dropped all my, like, tension, as far as, like, trying to sweat and get up as quick as I could, and worrying if I was going to have enough time to, then, of course, I was going to do just fine. And then so I did. So, it just goes to show, like, I'm in a lot of ways a big believer of mind over matter, and really I think if going into the right mindset in not just Master Duel but like really anything in life is going to very, very much be a large determining factor of the outcome. So I'm not like you know, willing things to happen by thinking about it, but you know, your mindset will affect your thought process, which determines your actions and your decisions, and I think that's really important. So yeah, we are using the same Swordsoul build that we've been using for the past couple of videos. This 41 card build was 40, and then we added the second Taia back a couple of videos ago. You know, with the Protos, with the Halkaroid online, of course. But I very, very much like this build. I think this is pretty much exactly where I like Swordsoul Tenyi to be. And you know me, I've been like very flexible. I mean, look at this build number is 2.2 right here. I've been very flexible in like trying to like add stuff and thinking about if I wanted to, you know, the ratioing and even like the number of cards in the main deck. But I'm still kind of considering if Shathana and or Heavenly Circle would be worthy additions. I know they are pretty good cards. I think they're a little and I don't want to call them niche because it's not like they have very specific scenarios where they're good. There are multiple scenarios, but in some cases they can be. I think though, if you're looking for just like core Tenyi Swordsoul cards, like maybe not a core, I don't want to say core, but like I think this is just a solid all-around list that doesn't try to do anything too fancy, that just kind of sticks to like the core game plan, I guess is what I meant to say, as opposed to like this being the core build. Because Swordsoul Tenyi is one of those decks that's greatly varied, especially with the number of cards people like to run. The reason I like to stick as close to 40 as possible is just because I like opening hand traps going second, and you know, the less cards you have to draw from, the higher the odds of that. It is relatively insignificant between like 40, 41, 42. I think 43, 44 is where it really starts to be a lot more significant, but I mean, that's kind of just my opinion as well. So, as always, we're going to break down this list card by card. I'll go ahead and show you every card that's in the deck before we take a look at some games here. All the games leading up to Diamond 1. So we've got Effect Veiler, Deskbot 001, 3 Tenyi Spirit Adhara, 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 3 Swordsoul of Mo Ye, 2 Swordsoul of Taia, 2 Incredible Ecclesia, the Virtuous, 3 Swordsoul Strategist Longyuan, 2 Tenyi Spirit Vishuda, 3 Tenyi Spirit Ashuna, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Archnemesis Protos, 2 Vessel for the Dragon Cycle, 3 Swordsoul Emergence, 2 Called by the Grave, 3 Crossout Exterminator, 2 Infinite Impermanence, and 1 Swordsoul Blackout. Down here in the extra deck, we've got 1 Yazi, Evil of the Zing, 2 Baxia, Brightness of the Zing, 1 Borlode Savage Dragon, 1 Draco Berserker of the Tenyi, 2 Swordsoul Grandmaster Chi Shao, 1 Chao Fang, Phantom of the Zing, 1 Baron de Fleur, 1 Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign Cheng Ying, 2 Monk of the Tenyi, 1 Crystron Halki Fibrax, 1 Shaman of the Tenyi, and then finally 1 Mecha Phantom Beast Auroradon. I think the 3 Crossout Designators in particular were like one of the MVPs of the build in this climb. I really, really, really liked having a full playset in my build. 2 is still definitely passable. I think if you're going to play this deck, I think if you're going to play a lot of decks in this format, not any, but a lot of decks in this format, you should probably be playing at least 2 Crossout Designator, and some decks don't want 3, but I think this is a deck that definitely, I don't know if it always wants 3, it does kind of depend on your build, but I think 3 is pretty good. As far as the extra deck goes, there's not really a whole lot I would change about it, except maybe this Borlode, this 15th slot where the Borlode is at now, is just, it's still in kind of a state of flux for me right now. I could see this being a Dragite, I could see this being even like a 3rd Monk of the Tenyi, I could see this being some weird fringe option that might come up, like, I think in the last video I talked about maybe like Access Code Talker potentially or something. weird like that again could come up. Whatever you put in there, it's going to be a pretty niche card. I do like the bore load. It came up, I mean, I think I showed the one time it majorly came up, which even then was just kind of like, it was kind of a win more scenario, but there was one other time where I summoned it against Eldelich. I think I've talked about this already, actually, and then, like, it was good. It kept me in the game against them for quite a while, but I ultimately didn't still end up losing the game. So, I mean, that said, I didn't summon Dragite a single time before I replaced it with bore load, so, you know, who knows. Alright, let's go ahead and get into some gameplay now. Okay, so this first game we're going to look at is against Numeron, and actually there's an important detail I want to note before we begin the game. When I actually played it, I lost the coin flip and then my opponent let me go first, so right off the bat, I'm like, it's got to be Numeron or Sky Striker. I mean, it could also be Cybers, it could also be Danger Kaiju would actually be more likely than Cybers, but it's very likely Numeron or Sky Striker. So I'm looking at my hand here. We obviously have a whole lot of options. I'm going to lead with the Ashuna, and then I'm actually going to immediately pivot into the Baron here, because my goal is actually to use the Ecclesia, and I think I'm just going to go for, if I remember right, I just go for a Halkline with Ecclesia here. Yep, just going to go for the Halkline, and if you can set up a Baron before like a combo line, especially like a Hulk line, definitely not a bad idea too. It's not always the best play, and you can make an argument that there was probably a better play in the way that like a play that wouldn't have used up so many of my resources up front. But I think ultimately this ended up working out. So, yep, Halkline here into the Auroradon, into the tokens, into the Deskbot. Nice thing about Halkline, as I've pointed out before, is that you don't need all 5 main monster zones. You just need 4 of them in the extra zone. So you can have an extra monster out if you're doing the Halkline. And also, nice thing about having Baron here is I don't have to actually tribute my Auroradon. I can just pop it, the Yazi with Baron's effect here. So that's pretty nice. We're going to go for the Baxia pivot here. So the way, what I mean by that is, you know, we're going to use the Yazi to get a... Oh, no, I'm sorry, we don't go for the Baxia pivot, my bad. Oh, because we don't have room, that's right. Or we're going to go for another level 8. We're actually going to do the Baxia second. I'll talk about the Baxia pivot later. Basically, what I mean by that is, if you're doing the Hulk Auroradon line, you can, like... I kind of like to refer to it in my head as, like, making it a quote-unquote pit stop, and you can, like, make an extra Baxia if you want it, which can be useful. I mean, in general, if it's an extra Baxia, like, an extra, you know, body on the board is usually not ever a bad idea. Okay, actually, before I want to interrupt myself, we'll talk about the Baxia pivot, whatever, when it comes up later. But here, you might be wondering, like, wait, what did you just do with Protos? You called Light? Yes, I did call Light. Again, because remember, I noted when we started this game that I lost the coin flip, but my opponent let me go first anyway. So I'm thinking it's either, obviously, like I said, Sky Striker or Numeron, most likely. I sat here and actually thought about this when I was playing the game, because I was like, you could make an argument for calling either Light or Dark here, right? If we call Light, yeah, we lose our Chi Xiao, but if it's Numeron, they just actually lose. Like, there's no way they can win. They can't win on this turn, and I have too much of a board already set up for them to probably be able to survive. In the event that it's Sky Striker, I would rather call Dark to hit Ray. That said, calling Dark doesn't even necessarily guarantee that they're not going to have plays. It could easily have a Hornet Drone. I think Hornet Drone is Light. I should have looked that up, actually, before I started here. But, I'm actually wondering now. Anyway, but what I ended up doing was calling Light there, because I was like, you know what? If it is Sky Striker, the Chi Xiao I don't think is going to do, like, too much. Like, I mean, yeah, it would stop, like, a Shizuku, or not Shizuku, it could stop a Shizuku, or a Hayate, or a Kagiri, whichever, you know, effect is most pressing at the time, but... you know, we still have the Baron Omni negate, and, you know, we still have a lot of bodies on the board, so I ultimately decided to hedge and call Light. The Lightning Storm is really promising. That tells me that it's very likely Numeron, as Sky Striker almost never runs Lightning Storm. It happens occasionally, but very, very rarely, so I'm immediately thinking, okay, cool, I made the right decision. Yep, here's the Numeron wall, so we're definitely into seeing that. Opponent activates the Numeron network here, and then the Desperate Forbidden Droplet to try to negate the Protos before they concede, so... yeah, this game wasn't very long. This normally isn't the kind of game I like to keep in. However, like I said, I wanted to show that game off because if you note things like that, small things that might tip you off to what your opponent's playing, such as losing the coin flip and they let you go first anyway, or in the last video for Swordsoul Tenyi anyway, I talked about how you know, at the start of the game, check your opponent's deck. If it's like 40, if it's above 40 cards, if it's like 41 to 45, it's probably a Swordsoul Tenyi deck. So you can, you know, plan accordingly. And yeah, I mean, there are worlds where it was Sky Striker and me blowing up my own Chi Shao actually ended up costing me the game there. Not only because I didn't have a negate, but also because I didn't call Dark. But like I said, I thought it was worth the risk. And in this case, it did end up panning out. So is it something I recommend doing every time? No. But is it something you should consider, like, to be an option to make, like, weird calls based on what you think your opponent might be playing? It's definitely not a bad idea. So, all right, let's go ahead and go to the next game. So this game is going to be against the Mirror Match. Fairly similar build to ours. They were playing Desires, though, which I'm still personally not the biggest fan of, just because, like, it's not that I don't like the effect of Desires in this deck. It's just that, one, finding room for not only the Desires, but also I would definitely have to readjust some ratios if I were to include Desires as well. So that is why I'm not a huge fan of it in the deck in my build. I don't think it's a bad card in the deck, but yeah, we're gonna lead with the Mo Ye, revealing the Mo Ye, and they have the Imperm, but we fortunately have the Crossout Designator here. One thing I like to do with Mo Ye is I typically like to reveal the worst Swordsoul or Worm card in my hand. So like in this case, I've got the Protos, the Blackout, and the Mo Ye. And this might seem kind of elementary to some people, but some people I think just don't kind of think about it sometimes. Because I'll see people like summoning a Mo Ye and revealing a Blackout, but then also using like a Longyuan right afterward. And I'm like, well, wait, why did you just reveal the Longyuan? Because now I know you have a Blackout, and now I know I can play around it. So it does pay to be mindful of what you reveal with Mo Ye. Like I said, I tried to reveal the worst card. Like there, I revealed the other Mo Ye instead of the Protos or the Blackout, so my opponent knows or doesn't know that I have these. Not only that, but also, well, I guess that is just kind of the main thing. But also, not only do they not know I specifically do have good cards, but on top of that, they also don't know, they also think my hand is worse than it might actually be. So here's another kind of weird play that I don't often do that I did here. And I ended up banishing the Chi Shao that was on board for the Protos. And there were a few reasons that I did this. One, I was looking at my opponent's, deck here, and I did note that they were at 41 cards, but I know I said 41 to 45 is probably Swordsoul Tenyi. I would say 42 to 45 is like very, very, very likely Swordsoul Tenyi. 41 is like, it could still be just about any deck. There's still decent odds because it's not that uncommon to run into other decks using 41 cards. So there was that, like, I thought maybe they're not the mirror match. It could still be a deck that Dark is important to them. Not only that, but they also, after using their Ash and Imperm there, they only have 3 cards left. So I thought that being able to shut off Dark effects might be a bit better than just the negate here. Now, again, I end up being wrong because it ends up being the mirror match, but given they had so few resources, I thought to myself, an opponent with not very many resources is most likely going to come back with like a Fusion Destiny from hand or something like that. And then the third kind of reason that I did it is that the Blackout here, right? Like, if I wasn't going to banish the Chi Shao for the Protos to do the Blackout, or to summon the Protos, then I would have had to black out my own Chi Shao, which can get a little awkward. Having to give up your Chi Shao sometimes before you use the negate, sometimes before you want to, and sometimes you just need the body on board in addition to the destruction. So those are all very minor reasons, but they all kind of accumulated to why I decided to banish the Chi Shao there. So yeah, and here we see it is the mirror match, so calling Dark with Protos is not really going to do anything here, but I mean, I guess there are still some Swordsoul decks that play DPE, so could potentially be useful, and obviously then they also can't summon their Protos, but that tends to be about all you hit. So, okay, when they normal summon the Deskbot, that's when I decided to flip the Blackout here. I wanted to save the Blackout. I thought about using it when they just had the Adhara and the Monk, but then I realized, like, they still have 3 cards, or was it 2? No, it was 3 at the time, because they hadn't normal summoned the Deskbot yet. They still have 3 cards in hand. It's so, even if I black out here, it's really, really easy for them to just then go like, okay, normal summon Mo Ye, reveal Longyuan, and then they just have plays, and then I'm kind of sad. So I wanted to save the Blackout for when they had either committed more into a play. Well, actually, that's mainly the thing I was looking for them to commit more to a play, either by going into a certain combo or by using their normal summon. Once they used the normal summon with the Deskbot, I was like, okay, cool, I'm down with this. And the reason I left the Adhara on board is because I thought if I did, they might go into their second Monk, which might cause them to end up wasting it. And I don't really care if they go into a Monk and then use Adhara to wheel Ashuna back, because I think they already used Ashuna, right? Yeah, they use of course, they use the Ashuna to summon the Adhara, so if they want to do that, that's totally fine with me. Now, this is a little bit risky because they might have another Tenyi monster in hand they can just, you know, plop on board. Well, the Vishuda would have to be. And then maybe they get a Shaman and maybe they have some plays, but I think that's relatively unlikely. And I ultimately decide that, yeah, that was just the better call there, so... We're going to lead with Baron on the back row. They've got their own Blackout, but I've also got Baron here, so it's not really that big of a deal. Even if I didn't still have the Omni Negate, like, yeah, I lose out on the Baron, but I'd still have the Protos, so, you know, it's kind of whatever. And then, you know, they're already at 68, so I think what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to activate Protos, call Earth, just to get rid of the Monk, summon the Ecclesia, and then just attack for game. Not just keeping it simple so we don't play into, like, a Nibiru or something unnecessarily. And yep, that ends up securing the victory for us there. So that was another game where, like, very, very minor decisions end up mattering in a way, in like a more major way. And when you make those minor decisions, it's not always going to like impact the course of the game the same way it might in these replays here. But it'll still, even in scenarios where it doesn't, it'll still like give you at least slight advantage you can build up towards a major comeback. And then there are the, admittedly some kind of rare, but there are scenarios where making weird decisions like that does end up helping you like that. So, okay, let's go ahead and look at the next one. All right, this game is against good old 60 card IDS. We love to see it. It's actually, whoop, sorry, I bumped the cord there. I actually don't mind playing against it too much. I see a lot of people talk about how annoying Winda is, but I don't think Winda's that bad to out, as long as you have a negate, which are more prevalent in this format, so I think that's why Winda doesn't seem quite as bad as maybe she once did. So I'm going to lead with the Emergence here, just for Mo Ye. Not going to try to do anything too complicated. We'll just do a simple, you know, opening play here. I can set up a Chi Shao and a Baron and 3 back row. 3, honestly, pretty good back row. So I'm pretty okay with that. I was a little concerned about getting Feather Dustered or Lightning Stormed. Well, I mean, we'd have the Baron negate, but still, it's still, even in those scenarios, like, forcing the Baron negate like that is still definitely not ideal. It is why I've kind of considered playing either Feather Duster or Lightning Storm in this deck. Obviously, not only to deal with back row ourselves, but also it does come up sometimes with Crossout Designator. Not as much as it doesn't like Trizu, but sometimes you do end up setting a lot of back row like this in this deck. So, okay, so yeah, so opponent's gonna set a card and then activate a card destruction here. I see the card destruction, and I'm noting that they're playing 60 cards. So, this is kind of something you can apply in general, but especially with 60 card decks. 60 card decks tend to be kind of bricky just due to the nature of being 60 cards, so it's often not a bad idea to use your negates, not on stuff that's going to make a guaranteed play, but that might accelerate them into one. Because my thought process is like, okay, they set one card and then activated card destruction, so they clearly only really care about one card in their hand and are willing to toss the rest just to accelerate and get new cards. Either that, or these cards will have effects that can be used in the graveyard and accelerate them further. So I'm going to use Baron here just to stop, because I think this will be a major factor towards stopping their plays for this turn. So that's why I'm going to Baron the card destruction here. And then my opponent's going to flip the face down card, which ends up being a Raigeki here, which, you know, you might think, oh, well, you shouldn't have negated the card destruction then. But then look, they just set a monster in a couple of back row and pass at this point. So I mean, I'm not really concerned by what they're doing here, and I don't know, it seems clear to me anyway that the stopping that card destruction really did prevent them from being able to go off. So yeah, I'm pretty satisfied, especially seeing that one of their back rows now is a Shadal Core. I'm like, oh yeah, if they only have one face down card and that's kind of all we have to deal with here, I'm totally down with that. So let's special Ashuna, go into the Monk, then we can use Vishuda to bounce this last back row. They're going to flip it. It's actually El Shadal Fusion, so the Winda is coming out here, but we have the negate, you know. I know, I'm pretty much just saying just have the out, but no, that's not all I'm saying, though. I'm also saying that Winda does have quite a few outs. Again, especially in a format like this, where we're teching, or should be teching against Swordsoul, a decent number of, you know, monster effect negations. So definitely going to use the call by here to negate the Windy. I don't need them getting any extra resources. And then, of course, we're going to flip up Imperm and negate this Winda as well, so we can actually go into our Halka-Fibrax combo line. And the nice part here is we still have a Crossout, just in case that last card in hand does end up being a hand trap there. They will get back the El Shadal Fusion, but I mean, I'm just planning on winning this turn anyway, so I don't really care. Yeah, it's if especially being at 6800, the Halki Fibrax line by itself is definitely more than enough to OTK your opponent. It's kind of scary how easily this deck can OTK people, really. So sure enough, their last card is a hand trap. It's an Ash, but like I said, we've got the Crossout, so I don't really care about that. I just really liked this game because it was a really nice, like, both of us like kind of used all of our resources up here to you know, to the end. But again, another thing I wanted to point out was, again, a small decision that ended up majorly influencing the course of the game. That's kind of the theme of these games, I guess you could say, is that relatively minor points like, oh, negating the card destruction here, even though that's not really a guaranteed combo, or, you know, again, like the other kind of minor things we did in the previous games, yeah, just end up influencing the game, how it plays out in a major way. So definitely don't underestimate decision points like that. I guess, again, is one of the main, I guess, learning points for this video. So, all right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next game here. So this game is against Trizu, and my opponent actually ended up opening a really interesting hand here. I actually remember this game pretty well, because I remember noting my opponent's hand as they played the hand out. I think they open Tenyi, Kit, Double Nerval, Crossout Designator here. And I remember noting that because after they played out all the cards, I thought about everything that was in their hand, and I realized, like, oh man, their hand was so close to being really just stopped by everything I opened here, because this is almost like an ideal turn 2 opening hand, right? Like, we've got the Ash, we've got the Sea, we've got a follow-up play with the Tenyi plus the Vessel, and we have a Crossout Designator. The only thing I might ask for here is like an extra Nibiru instead of maybe the Crossout, but and sure enough, our opponents got their Crossout, like I mentioned they would have for the Maxx here, so it's a shame if their hand were a little more bricky. Oh, this would have been like the perfect turn 2 line, but it's not that big of a deal. I've mentioned this before, but I've mentioned it a lot, actually, especially in the metagame analysis we took a look at yesterday, I believe, that Swordsoul in general just tend to have a pretty good Trizu matchup. Even if you are forced to play second, you know, playing through the Revolt and or DPE is definitely more manageable than playing through a bunch of negates and or a Blackout. As opposed to like the mirror match, or just playing into back rows, you know, when it comes to the Eldritch matchup, which is pretty hard for Swordsouls. So, okay, I wasn't really too sure what my opponent's like kind of doing here. I mean, I get that they're going for the Bear Brim here with the Shureg, but it just seemed like a really weird way to go about it. I thought they were going to set up a DPE here, but they're not really able to with what they have gone into here. So they do end up going for an Appaloosa. But still, even if you're going to go for an Appaloosa line, I think you could do better than a 2-material Appaloosa with Revolt based on what they had. Well, surely they could have, right? I think. I'm not sure actually off the top of my head. I'd have to really go back and... I mean, I know what their opening hand is, but I have to go back and really think about the line that I would do if I were to open that way. Maybe it is, I'm just not thinking about it because it's I mean, it's only been a few days, but I'm definitely obviously not playing Trizu as consistently as I did in seasons past. But, you know, here we can open with Vishuda and the Vessel. You know, Tenyi plus Vessel is always a really good line to open. We also drew Protos, which makes me feel a lot better about this line, because now I'm thinking, okay, I just need to force their Appaloosa Negates and the Revolt, then I can drop Protos, call Dark, pop their Shureg, and then it'll prevent them from going into another Shureg or access code during their next turn, which will, not guaranteed, but it'll definitely be it'll mean that it's very likely that they are unable to really come back during their next turn. But then my opponent kind of plays a little bit weirdly here. So I special the Protos at this point, and here's the thing: when I special the Protos, I'm fully expecting the Revolt to get flipped, because, like, surely you would flip the Revolt in response to the Protos being summoned, right? Because then you banish it, because Protos is kind of hard to destroy otherwise, and then, more importantly, your Darks aren't going to get sealed off. But opponent just kind of let it resolve, which I was pretty cool with, because again, my aim was to get them to banish the Protos so then I could do this here, you know, go into the Halki Fibrax Auroradon line without having to worry about the Revolt. But even when I called Dark, I mean, by the time I actually call Dark, it's already too late, because if you chain Revolt, well, actually it wouldn't be too late, would it? Because you chain Revolt and you get the summon. So yeah, they could have done it then too, but yeah, not really sure what parentheses here was thinking, but I don't know, maybe they just didn't understand how Protos works. But if that's the case, that's, you know, all the more reason why I always advocate knowing how decks play even if you're not playing the deck yourself, because knowing what all their cards are capable of is definitely handy for scenarios, I guess, kind of like that. Or we even saw it earlier in the first game, right, where our numeron opponent tried to use Droplet to negate Protos so they could summon light monsters, but then they realized, like, oh wait, that still doesn't actually stop me from not being able to summon light monsters. It really does pay to know what the popular meta, even if you're like determined to play a rogue or like even lower tier deck, like you're not interested in meta at all. If you're interested in playing competitively but not interested in meta, you should definitely still be looking up meta decks and seeing their combo lines and how they play. That way you know their choke points and how to play against them. So, all right, I think we've got 2 more games. Let's go ahead and look at the next one. Okay, so these last 2 games are actually the last 2 games from Diamond 2 up to Diamond 1, this being the second to last. So this is against Swordsoul Tenyi, which I've actually kind of been thinking about putting together, because I think if I don't already have everything for it, it's just like 1 or 2 more ultra rares, which is not really that big of a deal. So, and it seems like fun. I mean, it plays very similarly to Swordsoul Tenyi, but you get to do some other fun stuff that you don't necessarily do in Swordsoul Tenyi, so... yes, I see my opening hand here, and I'm like, well, I guess I'm just gonna go for it. I did actually think about this after I ended my turn. I technically could have gone for a Halkaroridon line here. It would have been really, it would have cost a lot of resources, but I could have specialed the Longyuan, opted not to summon the token, then normaled the Baron and gone into, or not the Baron, the Ash, and then gone into a Halki Fibrax, but... and admittedly, I didn't think about it until after I'd already summoned the Baron, but even then, it's like I said, that uses up so many resources, and it's so easy for my opponent to have, like, an Ash or just, like, any hand trap that would wreck me, and then not only would my combo be stopped, but then I would also be, again, lower on resources because I dumped extra resources into making the play happen. So I think even if I had thought about that, going for Baron and passing here would have been the right play, and... it might seem like a weak turn, and it is actually a weak turn, but all in all, we do have an Omni Negate still, and an Ash, and a Nibiru, so yeah, at this point I'm thinking, like, okay, maybe my opponent, like, I thought it was the mirror match, because, you know, there are some Swordsoul Tenyi builds that do play Jet Synchron. I thought it still could be the mirror match. I mean, either way, you want to Ash the Chi Shao here to prevent them from extending. It's nice, too, because now that I know they've used the search effect, I know they can't negate my Baron. I was a little bit worried that they might just not search and then keep the Chi Shao negate up to stop my Baron's Omni negate, but that is not the case here. So, I ultimately decided to let the Jet Synchron and the O-Line effect go, but not the Adhara effect, because really, I didn't want them to go into their level 8 Synchro and just chance it, right? Like, I mean, yeah, I could have negated potentially whatever level 8 Synchro they brought out, but, you know, it could have been something that got buffed later and they just attack over Baron, or potentially, I don't know, it's just a lot of weird things could happen there. I also didn't want them to get a Vishuda out here and then go into a level 8 Synchro, and then since they would still have the token out, be able to use Vishuda to force the Baron. So that's the other reason I decided to negate the Adhara here, specifically with the Baron. They do still end up linking into Halki Fibrax anyway, which I knew was going to happen, but again, if we didn't do it this way, then our Baron was just going to get bounced and was going to get forced anyway, so... but fortunately, they've already used their Jet Synchron and their O-Lion, so it looks like they had to go into their Rocks Rose Dragon here, and then into the Barricade Borg Blocker, which, it's a really interesting choice. I mean, I know they literally only use it, so yeah, they go into Auroradon. I wonder if that's something you could potentially use in this extra deck, because it doesn't happen too often, but there are times, probably not very easily though, there are times where, you know, your Deskbot is gone and you still want to Halkaroridon line, but that's very, very niche. Even more niche, I think, than Borreload Savage Dragon or Dragette or something, so, yeah, I'm also going to specifically Nibiru here so that they can't go into a Synchro with the O-Lion and the tokens there. And this hand looks really dead, but any hand where you have a tuner and a non-tuner is not dead. It's a Halki Fibrax line. Yeah, it's funny. When I first picked up the deck and I wasn't running Halkarorodon, I was kind of like underwhelmed sometimes by this deck's draws, and then I was kind of opened my eyes when I included Halkarorodon. Like, oh, that's why this deck is so good. Because like even now to this day, I'll still top deck an Ash sometimes with another monster on board and be like, oh man, a brick. But then I'll immediately have that light bulb moment of like, no, wait, I can Halkaline. This is a live play. It's always nice when that happens. All right, let's take a look now at the last game of this video and the last game of our climb to Diamond 1. This was a very, very satisfying last game here because we actually are going up against Eldelich, which I've mentioned a couple of times before, at least in my experience, but I think also overall, Swordsoul Tenyi does kind of tend to struggle a little bit with Eldelich, especially if they go first. But fortunately, we went first here. So, and we have a Vishuda plus Adhara. That's going to be a Hulk line. A Hulk line with Protos and Blackout. So that's really, really nice, as long as they don't have any hand traps to stop us. And at first I was like, oh, I got really lucky they didn't have any hand traps. But admittedly, I don't know if that was necessarily luckier, just because Eldelich does tend to play fewer hand traps overall. I mean, it was still luck, don't get me wrong, but yeah, like I said, Eldelich in general does just tend to play fewer hand traps, so I did have that going for me as well. Yep, this is fairly standard Halkarorodon online stuff. You know, using the Deskbot, going for the Yazi, using the Rorodon Tribute to pop the Yazi, and this is the Baxia pivot I was talking about. I'm pretty sure I do it this game. So instead of going straight into Chi Xiao with like a Mo Ye here, I'm first actually going to go for Taia, because what you can do is you can use Taia to go into a Baxia, then use Taia's effect, send a Mo Ye from deck to graveyard, then you can use the Baxia to pop your token, and then bring back the Mo Ye. So that's something nice you can do with the Halkarorodon line. Where you just get a free extra Baxia, and sometimes that can lead into you summoning a Chao Feng. I think it actually does here in this game, if I remember right. But sometimes it just means you just have an extra Baxia on board, but that's definitely not too bad either, just having the extra body. Not only the extra body in order to, like, you know, stop an attack or something, but if your opponent can only get rid of parts of your board but not all of it, they might leave the Baxia, and then you might be able to like set up a play next turn by bringing something back with its second effect. Baxia is just such a good card. The reason we play 2 in the extra deck is because it's useful as both a disruptor and an extender, right? Like, we can use it if we go second and bounce a couple of our opponent's cards, or spin them rather, shuffle them back into the deck, or we can use it going first, and it can we can use the graveyard reviving effect to extend. Or if you're going second, sometimes you can do both. Here I'm going to go for a Chao Feng line with the Cheng Ying here, because I can also summon the Protos and basically shut off light effects and dark summons. And the only deck that really... Actually, there's not really any deck that doesn't get hurt by having both light and dark denied. Like, even Trizu, you might think, but no, I mean, all their boss monsters, well, Shuriken Access Code are still dark, so... Yeah, here we're going to flip up Blackout during the end phase. I'm going to hit the 2 middle cards, and I actually hit the 2 Solemns. It's funny, you play Yu-Gi-Oh! Long enough, you tend to notice patterns of how stun players tend to set their back rows. I find that most stun players, and I also played stun for a long time in the IRL TCG, so I found myself thinking, and I find that most stun players tend to think that the first and the last card set are the most sus, so they'll tend to throw the most important ones in the middle. So those are the ones I tend to target. But we get the opponent down to 400, and they manage to save themselves right at the end. We're just going to call Dark again. I am going to call Dark and not Light here. One, because we're still shutting off light effects with the Chao Feng, but also on the off chance that they are playing DPE, because some Eldelich decks do play DPE. I don't think it's very common, but I've run into it before, so... And we can get a bonus Cheng Ying banish here. Basically, I'm just going to go for the Shaman of the Tenyi, and then wheel the Baxia back to my field, is my plan here. Just to set it up, just to, you know, have it. Better to have it not needed than need it not have it, you know. And we still have an Ash in hand in order to stop maybe a top deck play from our opponent here. They're just going to set a couple of back row and pass. And then activate the Huaquiero, which I think that's how you pronounce that, which is funnily enough actually going to set off my Swordsoul, so I can hit one of their face downs here, which was just an extra golden land, so it was a bluff, but we'll just move this to attack mode. I'm going to use Chi Xiao to negate my own Shaman here, because I want to banish this back row. I know this one is Scarlet Sanguine, which I know I can Ash, so, and I'm not even worried about if they summon an Eldritch, so I just wanted to get the banish the Chinging to get rid of that last unknown face down, and that was it. That was the game that took me to Diamond 1. That was my final boss, so to speak. So, yeah, it was a very, very nice climb tonight. It was much easier than when I was sweating earlier this week, trying to climb as quick as possible. But yeah, all right, let's go ahead and move on now to the outro. All right, as always, I just want to give a hearty and genuine thank you to everyone who watched all the way to the very end of the video like this. That greatly helps and means a lot to me. And I am also very appreciative of those of you who are choosing to comment and subscribe. Also very, very nice to see. I say it all the time because I mean it every time. I love interacting with you guys in the comments, and you guys always leave really good comments. You're always super, not only helpful, but just supportive too. I just have an awesome fan base. You guys are great. And I just can't ever, I really can't ever say enough how much your support means to me. And of course, if you would like to support by subscribing, that's also going to be the best way to get notified of when my videos go out. I do put out Master Duel videos every single day, so definitely stay tuned for those. I think that's about all I've got to say for this one. Now that we're finally at Diamond 1, we can go ahead and play some more niche or fun decks. I've got some interesting video ideas lined up, and if there's anything you guys in particular want to see as far as videos go, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I will definitely take your suggestions into consideration. So without further ado though, this is XLex signing out. Hope you guys have a fantastic day.